And let me see here. I know that XYZ Game Labs is going to be also putting it on their Twitch.
There are so many people saying hi to us in the comments.
Oh, cool.
Hello, wonderful people.
Why do I know? It's because I have this silly screen up. I need to not have my silly screen up so I can see all
heads
of it.
up.
All right. So it looks like we are going to have...
Morning.
How much coffee have you had, Laszlo?
I have not had coffee yet today.
Oh, yes. You are not my coffee kid. Yes, no. I know. All right. I am sending it to Jordan also.
Hello from Brazil. That's awesome.
Brazil.
That's pretty cool.
I went to Brazil once. Let me see here. It was real fun.
Right, I got that link. Thank you, Rachel.
Yes, and I sent it over to Jordan, so he should be able to pull that up on Twitch. And then I think we're at 60. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this so I can see more things. And I think I'm going to exit full screen because I want to see what everybody's saying. Okay, just a quick introduction on Zoom if this is your first Zoom, or if you are not familiar with functionalities of Zoom. Down at the bottom it shows participants, and in that spot at the bottom typically you can raise your hand or things like that. This is actually a webinar. So we're not able to see all of your beautiful faces, but we do have the opportunity to use something called the Q&A, which is also down at the bottom. And all of our attendees should be able to submit questions. I even enabled it so that we can go Reddit on this and upvote questions that you really are interested in seeing answered. We don't have any polls, but I mean, Laszlo is very creative. Who knows what he'll throw into this presentation. And all of you, if we end up having too many people, they will be prompted that this is also being live streamed over on YouTube Live on the 524 Labs YouTube. And Adam, do you want to tell your Twitch URL and where it's also going?
Yeah, it's twitch.tv/XYZ Game Labs.
Okay.
And I'm looking at it right now, and they almost have it pulled up.
Excellent. And I actually host yours if I'm not live. So it then goes over to twitch.tv/524 Labs TV. So there are
that's
so many
not
ways.
Confusing. That's not confusing at all.
No. Just say TV as many times as you can. You'll be fine.
So many platforms.
I don't post it anywhere.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. Hey, you're reliable like that.
I am.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, very.
I'm sharing it now, but Rachel, I need you to change your company to 521 because I keep typing 521 instead of 521.
Oh, no.
I mean, every day. Like every time.
And I suppose we can drop that in Discord for sure too, because lots of us have Discord happening. Jason has an epic Discord community that he has cultivated, so
it's true.
I'm sure that he has that.
Sharing it now.
Absolutely true.
Hello, UK and West Michigan and Wisconsin.
Oh my goodness.
And San Jose.
But the disgusting thing is that Jason actually uses the light theme on Discord.
Oh goodness.
That wasn't in the list of questions,
Oh, great.
I'm not gonna talk about that. I think I'm the only one in the world.
I'm pretty certain.
Many amazing designers.
Daryl from Canada, Zagros.
Daryl from Canada. Right? I know who that is.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah.
That's an Andrews right there. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
So we're up to 70 participants. Should we get started?
We should. Yeah.
Take it away, Laszlo.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I mean, literally everyone from all over the world. This is just awesome to see. I mean, yeah, it kind of sucks that we can't meet in person, but it does mean that we can see so many more people from all around the world. I'm a pretty excitable guy. But when I was approached,
What?
I know. I was
had no
as surprised,
idea.
but it's pretty exciting, right?
It is.
I was even more excited than usual when I was approached to moderate this panel. I grew up playing Game Boy, and then games on my Palm Pilot, and then games on my iPhone. So for me, gaming has always sort of gone hand in hand with portability. And to me, the hobby board gaming revolution is actually more or less synonymous with small box or even boxless games. I mean, I'll happily sit down to a session of Gloomhaven anytime. I did so last night, but while I was playing Gloomhaven, I was actually also playing a game of Sprawlopolis.
As is your standard.
It is my standard, and this I play it during other people's turns. This deeply endears me to my gaming group, as you can imagine. But yeah, I'm an enthusiast. I am someone who loves games and loves these games, but I am completely an outsider to the industry, as are many of the attendees here. So I am so pumped to have this opportunity to speak to not just, these amazing other panelists here, but actually people who are among the kindest and most competent and most generous with their time professionals that I've met in any industry.
What do you want from us? You're being very nice.
I was actually not speaking about you specifically.
Oh, hey, that makes sense.
He wants nothing from you, Adam.
I do. So I'm really excited to introduce everyone here and to ask some questions, and this gives me the opportunity to peek behind the curtain in a way that usually I don't get a chance to. So thanks for joining us and being part of this. I'd like to welcome Caesar Al-Jassar, director of Alley Cat Games, who just said that his company's kind of known and kind of not known in the US. I think that's a lie. Dice City Hospital.
Called out.
Exactly. Nope, I'm not pulling any punches today. Dice City Hospital, right?
Yeah, Dice Hospital. Yeah, that's probably what we're mainly known for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. And they are expanding, or I guess maybe shrinking, to add pocket-sized games such as Tinder Blocks. Get it? Tinder Blocks. Tins.
You got the tin. You got the tin pun. Great.
I did. Thank you. Yes. And Pocket Pharma.
Yeah.
Which just sounds awesome. I mean, drugs in your pocket. Great idea.
Don't tell anyone.
Rachael Blaske, CEO of 524 Labs, or perhaps 521 Labs, according to Jason. Publisher of the wildly successful Mint series of games, starting with the modern classic Mint Works. Jason Tagmire, founder of Button Shy Games, which produces how many new games a year?
Too many.
Yeah, 12 new wallet games, 18 card games, and then a whole host of additional games that it's like he just wakes up in the morning. He's like, I should publish a game today. So he does.
That's how it works.
That's how it works. Sprawlopolis, Tussie Mussy, Spaceship, Twin Stars. And Adam McCrimmon, CEO of XYZ Games. Does that stand for Examine Your Zipper?
No.
Okay.
We ran up against the deadline of registering the company name, and we had said as a joke early on in the process, let's call it XYZ Game Labs because we make games, and that sounds neat. And
you do
it's
make
stuck.
games.
It's stuck, and then now we're stuck with it, and it's what it is.
There you go. I mean, that's yeah.
And our foray into the pocket game world, the first one is our Quarks series, which started with Zoo Year's Eve.
Right.
And there's 2 more Quarks games coming later this year.
But they haven't been announced.
They haven't been announced.
I'm pumped.
Maybe I'll show some stuff from them in this call. Maybe.
That makes me happy. So what I love about the makeup of this panel is that 2 of you have really focused on exclusively or almost exclusively on small games, while the other 2 of you have both small and traditionally sized games in your lineups. So by way of introduction, could each of you tell us how you came into making not just games, but uniquely small games?
Who wants to answer that first?
You go. You go.
Very quickly, I'll go first. I mean, we originally did the what we call pocket games. So we did Pocket Sub and Pocket Farmer, just simply because we would sort of pitch them and we liked them, and we liked the fact that they had a small table footprint. We kind of paused that for the time, and then we concentrated on our more Euro games like Chocolate Factory and Dice Hospital. But this time last year, we were pitched a game, Tinderblocks actually, and we just loved the simplicity of it, and we just thought to ourselves, well, hang on, why don't we just do a resurgence of our pocket games? And that's where that sort of came about for us, and it's been really successful for us so far.
I love it. Adam?
Yeah, so pocket games for us started because the first game we did, Robot Lab, when we designed Robot Lab, I wanted a game that you could kind of take with you anywhere and play easily. And then as we did that game, and then we did Anoka, which was also a small box game, and then did Tiny Tina's Robot Tea Party, the Borderlands licensed game that we did. And after we had finished those, gone through all those, I had the itch of like, I want us to make bigger stuff, bigger games, but I don't want to lose like kind of the creative spirit and the flexibility that comes with designing games that are meant to fit in your pocket. And the idea of being able to kind of do both at the same time felt like a good way kind of to diversify what our product line was. So for us, Zoo Year's Eve came up because I was a judge on the Board Game Design Lab podcast design challenge last year, and Zoo Year's Eve was one of the submissions that I judged. And afterwards, I was like, you know what, this thing's great. I love the feel. I love the theme of sneaking animals into a New Year's Eve party, and realized that like we've got a licensed game arm of our business. We've got a big box kind of mainline games like Arch Ravels, and having a pocket game series meant that we had all three of those, all three of the areas that we want to design things and we want to make stuff in. We've got something that can scratch that itch across the board. So I spent the last 6-8 weeks designing a new Quarks game, and it's been very, very exciting to do because it's fun to do something that's that small and has those kind of constraints, because the creativity feels a lot higher. You have to really work to solve your problems.
That's interesting that you would separate that out into those three types of areas.
Yeah.
I'd like to
talk. Oh, you want to hear more about it?
I would actually.
So not to go too deep into say business strategy here, but when we started, the thought was, oh, we're going to make games. Hey, there's just make games, no big deal. It's just that's what we're doing. But then quickly realized that we wanted to have bigger, more in-depth experiences like Arch Ravels that have big board presence, and we love the production of them and we love the product design of them. But we still wanted to be able to have the things where you get an idea and it's around one or two mechanics and it's really fun and interesting and creates a fun experience at the table. We didn't want to like ignore those titles. We're also looking for a way to make sure that we can do more titles in a year. As a company, you want to get a few more titles out there because that helps you in distribution, that helps you in market penetration and brand recognition for your company. So going to pocket games that let us scratch that creative itch, publish some cool stuff that's out there that people are making. I mean, like Jason does 12 new games a year, if not more. And yet there's still more pocket games being designed by people, usually people who are, in many cases, the ones that I'm seeing are ones that it's like their first or second design, or it's a design that they just started working on. And but they're really, that person is really set on this limitation of, I need to make this small. So, we created some rules and defined what a pocket game means to XYZ and what a Quarks title is. And once we had those rules in place, it became really easy to kind of look at something and go, oh yeah, that fits it, or that doesn't fit it. And we still get to, we get to make some really cool stuff that wouldn't exist otherwise. And we get to play with some fun, interesting themes that we probably wouldn't play with otherwise.
Really interesting. Thank you. Jason?
So Adam mentioned there being more games in that design space, and we just had our worker placement challenge end this morning or last night, and received 155 entries to that challenge. So there's so much more. It's wild. But we got started. I was designing games and looking at an angle for publishing games that I liked, and not necessarily games that I designed. It was more games that I liked. And I wanted something that was within reason. I didn't want to overcomplicate things and I did overcomplicate them in a complete different way by doing hand assembly and all things like that. But I didn't want to overcomplicate the businessy things like ordering from China and all the pre-press and larger, larger minimums and things like that. So I had a friend submitted a game to me called Movie Plots he didn't even submit it to me. We just played it together a ton. And we were all in this little game design group, and I was looking at how we could make small games like that. That one was only 12 cards, and make that a thing because it was a cool design restraint. It was accessible for publishing. It was, 2 sheets of paper, whatever. So I looked at that, and it was right when like Love Letter hit and everything like that. So it really became, how do I make this a model instead of just publishing a game? So we just kind of went from there.
I think for a lot of people, Love Letter was sort of not the introduction to small games, but the introduction to the idea that small games can actually offer a punch. That they're not just something to distract or a filler. They're actually something that can be really interesting.
Exactly.
Rachel?
Well, we kind of came into it in a different way by, I think that the cool thing that Jason does is he inspires people to think really, really specifically with his design challenges. And when you add all those restrictions in the way of him thinking of it as a publisher is he's like, okay, this is what I want to manufacture, and this is what it would cost and everything. And then just putting it out to the community and say, okay, can you do this? And is it, am I going to be able to publish it? We kind of came in to the scene the same way. My husband made a game called Mintworks. He made it for a BGG Mint Tin contest, and it went over well enough that he felt like he could learn the skill of Kickstarter. And going through Kickstarter, it ended up getting more of a following than we thought, and we were able to bring that to market. And so the cool thing about that I think that we did right in that is starting small, because now I think of a large game and that seems very complicated. And especially on a freshman project, you should start small, because yes, there's going to be so many other restrictions, but man, in terms of cost and markup and things like that, this is like a good way to jump into the business. So I applaud those of you who came in with the big bucks, because you're better than me. So
no, it's a different type of crazy.
Yeah, well,
it's a different type of crazy.
That's true.
Well, actually, that sort of leads into my next question here, which is, you're talking about small games as being sort of simpler to publish or simpler to create, from a, not necessarily a design standpoint, but just from an actual creation and publishing and distribution standpoint. Are there challenges unique to publishing or marketing small games, however, that you don't find in bigger games? So I guess I'm asking, is there anything that makes producing and publishing and distributing small games harder?
Well, I was speaking to a distributor about this in the US. We're with most of the US distributors now, which is great for us as an indie UK publisher. But we asked that question specifically to the distributors, and their answer was always shelf space. And the tiny footprint makes it a huge problem for these small games, because the retailers either have so many of these small games already, or they're overshadowed by the bigger games. And that's always the biggest challenge of how do you present it. I think Rachael sort of tackled it really well with their company by having it in a tin. And you know, Gamewright had done it with Sushi Go. It's obviously bigger than Mintworks, but it's a similar premise. And you know, they put theirs in a tin, and that's sort of how you got around it. But that's always the challenge, which is how do you, like, every product or every game that you release has the challenge of what makes this game stand out. And is it the theme? Is it the mechanics? Is it people talking about it? Whatever. But ultimately, if you're going to get it in people's hands, it's got to be sold. The way you sell it is through displaying it. But how do you display small games when it's overshadowed by huge boxes of things like Gloomhaven, which everyone wants? And shelf space is maybe less so in the US, more so in Europe, where retail stores are much smaller. But obviously you still have relatively small stores in the US, and you've got to think about that. And having it in a tin was a great idea. I think having it as a wallet as well with Jason, fantastic idea as well, because you know, when you hear wallet, you think, oh, I can put it in my pocket. And these are the kind of things that retailers themselves can say, if you want something small, we have wallet games. The tins can sort of stand on themselves. These sort of considerations are probably one of the tougher things to think about when you're making the game, even from when the designer pitches you the game or whatnot.
313 wallet games can fit inside one box of Gloomhaven.
That's correct.
Fantastic stat.
And now
I would show you, but Gloomhaven is holding up my computer right now.
Well done. Well, what I was thinking absolutely packaging and shelf space and claiming a consumer's eye is a huge consideration, and difficult for us at our size. But to back off from that specifically, I feel like what sets the small games apart from bigger games is the accessibility of it. To be able to have it in your pocket, to design something that you can learn in, under 5 minutes, play it in 30, and then be, able to explain everything and use it almost as a gateway to bring other gamers into the hobby. And what I really like about what we've done is stripping down a larger game and really streamlining it to just be, I feel like it's elegance, it's beauty, it's trying to bring it to its absolutely distilled state, so that way there is no excess. It is very focused, and you also have to think outside the box in terms of component utilization, because everything has to serve multiple purposes. The design restrictions are very hard and fast, and you've got to really think that through.
I'll jump in. So one of our big issues when we started this was exactly what Caesar said with retail. Like, we just decided not to do it at all. It was, how do you fit these games in stores? They're going to go into a glass case and nobody's ever going to see them, ask for them, or anything. So the solution to that was just don't do it. That was what we started with. And it's worked really well up until retailers were interested in our games, and we've sort of found a way
to put success.
I know, exactly. But we found it's terrible though, because we still don't make any money on them, which is my second point. But we put these in these little
that's the point I was going to make.
Yeah, so I'm going to steal that for a second. We put them in these little clamshell things that we stole from Love Letter does it with their little pouches, and at least they can go on a wall or something like that and not get stuck into a case. But the money thing for us, and I'm sure for everybody else, is with a small game, there's just not a lot of money to go around. So could be the same percentage, if you sell it to a distributor who's going to sell it to a store or whatever. But if there's a error or if there's a cost, it's going to eat up your tiny, few dollars you're working with a lot faster than anywhere else. we'll see a lot of comparisons to stuff like Tagmire does and say like, why can they offer free shipping and you can't? It's because we're working with like $3 and they're working with like $35. So it's, you know, it's just that big difference it escalates the struggle with smaller games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll join in to what Jason said there. You know, for a Quarks project, for a pocket game project, you know, my art budget is lower, my marketing budget is lower, the production budget is lower, and you know, we have a target. We want to produce these games and sell them for like $10. So, you know, being able to make enough margin on that and sell enough copies that with that low dollar amount margin, the whole project has, you know, is substantiated from a financial standpoint. That can be difficult. Now, the nice thing is, because we're talking about limited components, it makes it a little bit easier to figure out what we're going to offer and to keep that price down. Well, for us to keep the price down, I don't know. Rachael fits a lot in mid tins. There's a lot of stuff in those tins. That's a huge amount of things. But I'd say that's one of the troubles or one of the challenges is just making sure that you can design something and produce something that you really feel, when I say design there, I mean product design something, that you really feel is a good bang for the buck for the person who's going to buy it, while also making sure that you make what you need to make on it in order for the project to be worth the time and effort of doing it. And as far as merchandising goes, packaging and merchandising, I'll say one, Jason, wallets were brilliant.
Thanks.
Brilliant, sir. We obviously just like totally ripped that off for New Year's Eve. Use the wallet. I think we're gonna go
heard it here.
Yeah, we did. Sorry. I mean, I apologize.
It's all right. It's not news.
But
we knew it was good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I will say that what we're trying with New Year's Eve is there's like this nice little cutout in the front that gives you art from the game. And we put it on a shelf hanger and it's got little feet on it so it can stand up on a shelf. So that's what we're trying with this one. The other Quarks titles are going to have more thematic packaging that are still going to be pocket sized. So those will be interesting to see like how those work out. But
I'm getting more and more curious with every word you say.
Oh man, it's like I'm doing it on purpose or something.
Ever the marketer.
You are kind of a jerk.
My cool
I'll
thing
show you stuff. Don't
was, you know, doing the we have like a little pop case, a pop display is what it's called, and then you pop it up, and then you've got at least room for, you know, 6 a piece, or as our titles grow, you know, bringing it further and further out, and then eventually we take over the space of that size, like a big box game, and we can claim our area that way. So that's, I mean, that is kind of where we're at right now. But I know that we are working on other manufacturing design, packaging designs too. So you just kind of got to go with what works for sure.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing as well. The CDUs, customer display units, is what you're talking about, Rachel, right? And actually, we just had our first one designed, and we're really excited about that as well. It's just, it can be put on the shelf, it can be put right by the till or whatever.
I mean, 3 of you have games as part of your background here, and none of you do I see your games in your background. I mean,
there's a little pile of XYZ games right there. But yeah, I'm trying not to, like, you know, hey, here's my thing. Yeah. Well, I just do this the whole time.
And Caesar's at his in-laws, so let's just not do that.
So am I.
If I look across the computer, I'm looking at 4 quivers that are holding quite a few of our games.
I kind of figured that Jason would say, if you look across the room, you'll see 500 wallet games.
That's in that room there.
Mine are off screen up there on the small box getting listed.
But I mean, it does speak to the difficulty of it that, you know, I can see like Pret-a-Porter and I can see Small World and stuff, but I can't see, you know, Sprawlopolis or Mintworks or New Year's Eve.
No,
it's part true. It's like we need to come up with a cool box that goes on a Cadillac. Weird.
Right. Yeah, some kind of like a thing that lets you store all of your pocket games.
Right.
And like display them.
Teasers. Okay.
Yeah.
In your experience, let me switch gears a bit. In my experience, when I bring out a game like Sprawlopolis or Mintworks or Tinderblocks, even now people seem to look at those as being, in a sense, sort of less than. In a sense, it's not like as serious a game as Gloomhaven or Twilight Imperium or something. Obviously, there's a difference in time there. There's a difference in investment in each particular game. But is there anything that sets small games apart from large games other than their size? Is there anything that you can do in small games, or is there anything that small games can offer players other than just their portability?
Risk. There's risk. We can do things that, like, you don't want to base an entire game on this mechanic. You don't want to base a big box, a big production, lots of money, lots of time invested. You don't want to do that on a silly card laying mechanic. But that silly card laying mechanic is super fun. It doesn't fit into something else, and you could make a whole game out of it. So for me, I look at the small box arena as a place where, like, we can try something that is weird and odd and would it make sense otherwise, or we couldn't fit into another game, but it's a cool mechanic that's fun to do. That's a way that we can explore some of those things and get creative with how we express them. That, I don't want to risk a giant project that, has real margin and revenue and the whole company.
Wait. Real margin. I've got some margin.
Of course. No. I'm speaking as somebody who publishes lots
These
of
are real margins.
games, and yeah. Sorry,
Calling you out.
I'll jump in for a
that's
second.
my perspective on it.
So one of the things that I like that we can do, especially because we have the same packaging, game after game after game, what we can do is surprise people. People see these little tiny games and expect a very simple, experience. And it's why I lean heavily on table presence. So if you open this little wallet and out comes this whole thing that has cards that simulate boards and tableaus and trackers and things like that. And you can't do that all the time, but you can do it from time to time. That surprise doesn't always come from other games when, you have a back of the box and you see exactly what you're going to expect, but we can exceed expectations with this tiny little format. And the other thing is it adds really creative design space because you're working with such limitations. So things happen, I say that these contests that we run, we're always seeing like next year's cool new ideas because people are just cramming as much as they can into this design space. And when you see so many of them, clever gameplay emerges. So I think when you have, as a designer, when you have more to work with, you can't get that creative and new and come up with new things as forcefully.
And Jason, one thing I'll say, in Vino Morte,
it shouldn't be fun. It shouldn't even be a thing.
Like,
it's beautiful. It's stunning. It really is. Like, that game it's so elegant and so well done and so fun.
And it shouldn't be like by no right is it that much fun.
Yes, exactly.
So good. It's so good.
Oh, and I just have to tag on here that every almost I would say some of my best public gaming memories, like where I will pull it out while I'm waiting for something to eat, or like, if one of my kids is in the ER again because they broke something, whatever, we're sitting on the floor in the ER for hours and I pull out Circle of Wagons and the whole place is like, why do you have a big circle on the ground? And it's so cool to be able to say, I've gotten so many comments playing Circle of Wagons in public. And then the other thing that what was I gonna say? You were saying something amazing. I'll come back to it.
In Vino Morte or
no, it was more coffee. Hang on.
It was about
while you're
Stu,
remembering,
Stu, right? Stu is my
Yes.
second favorite button try game.
For us, when we did Tinderblocks and Kitten, we were thinking about, we were relatively well established in hobby, and we were thinking about, how do we break into the Barnes and Nobles, the Targets, and the Walmarts, and the Waterstones here in the UK. And we wanted something that Adam mentioned, which was something that wasn't risky. And Tinderblocks and Kitten are very, very small games. There are very few components in terms of, is there a rule book? Is there meeples? How many cardboard pieces are there? Have you got the cardboard in the right position for the big box game? So Adam and I probably know that, probably more so than the other two, because we do a mix of games.
Last night I was just having a conversation with one of my co-founders about, can I add one more wooden meeple into this game? Am I allowed to add one more wooden meeple in?
Yeah, I mean, these things you have to consider, because then you have to, get it designed, and you have to go back to the manufacturer and blah, blah, blah. But with these small games, it's less risk because there's less stuff in it. But as a publisher, you still have to make the game fun to play. So yeah, for us, it was less risk, and we thought, well, let's make it mass market games, because we thought that so many of you great guys out there, particularly Rachel and Jason, have a relatively and pretty well established microgame line. So we didn't really want to go head on against you guys with great hobby games. So instead, we wanted to do mass market stuff. So that's why we came up with Tinderblocks and Kitten. They're risk averse and so forth.
I love that you brought that up, Caesar, because that is actually a consideration for us. I think anyone getting into the pocket game space has to acknowledge that Button Shy exists and makes amazing pocket games.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the monopoly on that. So why would we even want to tackle you guys?
Right? Yeah, like
ours is a little weird and different, at least.
It is.
No, I get that, and your distribution model is different to most people, right? But it works for you, and why would we start? I mean, we are doing 18 card games, but we're doing it in a different manner to you guys, because they're going to be sort of add-ons to games that are of a similar theme or whatnot. They're not going to be standalone great games.
Remembered.
Yes, Rachel.
Okay.
Ding.
I remembered.
Good job.
I was going to say that the other amazing thing that Jason has in his model is the fact that he is recruiting through all of these contests, but what the side effect is the incredible community he's built, because everyone engages with him and he's so available on Discord, and they're constantly becoming part of a family, not just pitching and running. And I think that is one of the coolest things that has come out of that model also. And to speak to the risk that you guys keep saying, oh, it's not risky. Okay.
I didn't say it's not risky. It's less
relative.
Risky. It's relative.
Let's talk. And you guys who have not played with tins yet, Caesar, what's our
I'm not going to play with tins. I already told you that. I'm staying away from tins. That's Rachel's thing. I'm not touching it.
So Caesar, let's talk about the MOQ. And to our attendees, the minimum order quantity for a tin to be able to get from a manufacturer. When we talk in risk, what do we have to promise to pay to purchase to get these beautiful little tins that are not risky?
Yeah. I mean, to make it so that it's a price that people want to pay, our minimum order quantity was 5,000.
5,000.
Yeah, and really, it would have been better if we'd gone to 10,000, but we were just conservative, just because it was our first foray into it. But yeah, 5,000's a lot.
It is. I mean, when you think of the average Kickstarter that is either a one and done or even successful in planning to go into distribution, they're talking 1,500 copies, because they got to their funding goal because they had 1,500 people, whereas my Kickstarter needs to get to 7,000 backers, to be able to have something like that. And so I would not say that. I would say it seems safer, but there are definite risks when you are really breaking down what you have to deal with in tins.
Yeah, and I think the substance and the style of game that you folks are creating with the Mintins is different. I think it's substantively different than something like Innovita Morte or New Year's Eve or something like that. It's just cards based. So I get that, yeah, and I don't mean to disparage those at all. There's a lot of time and effort and work that goes into that, and that is a project for those projects, like, you know, for Jason and Rachel, for you folks, like that is every project is margin that you need to run your company, and I get that
for sure. Well, we're at like a quarter till there, Laszlo. So
we are.
And I don't know
this
if you guys can
so
see.
good.
Oh, I know, we could go all day. But what do you guys see the Q&A? Do you see that, Laszlo, or is that only in my host?
Yes, I do. There are a lot of really good questions coming out here.
Cool. Why don't we have the attendees to go into the Q&A if they can see it and like upvote to make sure that we hit some really good ones in that last 10 minutes, and that way we can hit one more question. Does that make sense? I mean, you're in charge, Laszlo. You
I am in
Rachel,
charge.
why are you quarterbacking Laszlo?
You do you. Backseat driver off.
Let's talk a little bit about city building games.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, all right, I'm down. Let's go. Let's do this.
That's an inside.
The most upvoted question actually is a really good one, which is a question about terminology. How do you define a small game from a micro game? And I know that, for instance, Jason doesn't even use either of those terms. He just calls them wallet games and gets rid of the whole controversy. But that is a good question. I mean, what defines a small game and a micro game, and why would you choose to use one term over another?
Well, we use Pocket Game to describe the Cork series, so it's another different terminology. How would I define a small game from a micro game? I think a small game is something that, you know, it's, I don't know, a micro game is one that fits in your pocket. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me. Like the Minton games, every Bud and Shy game, the Cork series, like all of them, they all fit in pockets. So they're, to me, a micro game from a transporting format.
And then we have literally Pocket Pharma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
I think of small box as more Tiny Epic size. It's not going to fit in my pocket, but it will fit in. What is it, like a bubble mailer? Like, I mean, again, when you're in publishing, you're thinking not just manufacturing, but you're thinking fulfillment. How much am I going to have to pay to get these out? So, yeah.
Women's pockets, Rachel. Because they're smaller and they don't exist in a lot of things. And I'm really sorry about that. I don't know what happened. The dresses don't have pockets.
Let's delve into the.
Does it make sense?
All right, Caesar, you were going to say something over there?
No, you carry on. No.
Okay, go.
What are the pillars of a small size game? What are the most important things that go into designing one?
I mean, it could be anything, really, and that's the beauty of game design, as Jason's company has shown. It's worker placement, it's card drafting, whatever. And that's kind of the beauty of small / micro games, is that they can literally be anything. So if you're the sort of person who likes worker placement games, then there is probably a micro / pocket worker placement game out there. I mean, Mintworks, right? And Sprawlopolis for the spatial stuff and so forth. So, you know, it's there's something out there for everybody, and that's one of the beauties about them.
One of the things that I try to discourage is games that are one note, very simple mechanic and things like that, because it's really going to show in a micro game, because that's all it is. There's no extra components to hide that, no extra phases or turns or anything like that. So if the game is just simple one note, it's usually like a big quick pass for us when we're looking for new games.
On the other hand, in Vino Morte,
that's one note, but doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that one. It was initially passed. It absolutely was initially quickly passed. And one of our judges in the contest, Josh Edwards, board game reviewer, was like, no, you need to consider this. You need to reconsider it. So he made us all print it out, play it right then and there. Or I think we even played it with just a deck of cards or something. And we were like, all right, you're right. We totally overlooked that in its simplicity.
I have some loose guidelines for what quirks can be, and it's got to play in 30 minutes or less. You have to learn it in 5 minutes, and it has to fit in your pocket. That's it. Like, those are the requirements. It has to meet those 3 requirements, and then I'll consider it for quirks. And then as far as the next step after that, it just comes down to what does this feel like? What's the experience at the table? What are you feeling as you play it, and what are the other people on the table feeling as they play it? And if all those things line up to a fun, interesting time that lasts, anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes, then that's great, because we're intending to make filler games with the Cork series. We're intending to make the thing that you pass the time when you're waiting in line, when you have a big game that's being set up and somebody's like, it's going to take half an hour to set up Gloomhaven. While he does that, do we want to play this? Like, so that's what we're intending to do with that series. So for us, the requirements end up being, I don't know, it feels a little bit easier. It's like, I kind of just know, or I don't know right away. Like, is this going to work for that line?
I feel like we're kind of diverging at this point, where we're going to start doing some different things where we'll have standalone games that are small in tins, and then we're also going to have our Mint series that we're known for. And the Mint series, I think the beauty in that one is the fact that it is going to be a simple dive into a singular mechanic that people can then feel like they have mastered a concept, and that opens them into a whole new world of that type of mechanic, and then they can keep going into the world. So with that, I feel like my requirements on that are, yes, it needs to be stripped down and simple, but I want it to have that extra something that makes it so that it's replayable for gamers to be able to play over and over, to introduce additional people into the hobby, and not be bored doing it. With our other things that are coming, those are kind of wild cards. It's like, it could be something completely several different types of mechanics and components or whatever. It's definitely us diversifying into a different branding kind of thing. So we kind of have our little IP that we've created with the Mint universe, and then we've got our others. So
I will say I hate worker placement games. I have never found one I liked until I played Mintworks and realized, holy cow, this is actually super, super fun. Yes, that one right there.
Might have pushed him
a little bit. I appreciate it, though. But I guess I want to push back a little bit on that. Do small games need to fit into the gateway or filler game niche? Can they be main event games?
I mean, that's a goal here, is that they are main event games, or they can be main event games, but that main event might be different. It might be a restaurant, it might be, late night at a convention and you're popping out, whatever you have in your pocket. Our little tagline is, we don't believe in filler, which is, it kind of goes through everything we do, in that it should never be like the afterthought, or not the afterthought, your second choice or anything. And that all drove from, we were in the Mensa, the challenge they had.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like $250 or something to submit a game. And a couple of our designers were really pushing for it. And I was like, well, if any game's going to win, it's going to be Sprawlopolis, and or Place, or whatever it is. So we submitted it, and they showed a video of them like panning through all the games, and you see all these huge games, and then like Sprawlopolis was like this little tiny thing on there, and it kept going. And I was just like, we can never compete with that, at a physical level of, seeing a game on a shelf or anything like that. So it really was like, what are those other places that people are playing games, and what are those, I'm picking up just a game in the middle of the afternoon, I'm going to play it. How can we make it work for that? And how can that not feel secondary? That's always been a goal. And it's, some of the games we have are longer play times. I think we have a 45-minute or an hour, and just trying to see if that works. And occasionally it does. So the fact that it can is cool, and it gives us a lot of hope.
I'm gonna abuse my moderating powers a bit and skip further down the. I know, shocking. Skip further down the list of Q&As to pick a question that I selfishly want answered. Talking about main events, I'm primarily a solo player. I know, and I can certainly make a main event out of like a 2-game campaign of Spaceship or something. How important is solo play to be included in a microgame? Love Letter, which is sort of again the founding member of this club, is can't really be played solo. It can't be imagined. But also we're seeing so many games starting from a few years ago released with solo modes or have solo modes in some cases, unfortunately, just tacked on. So how important is solo mode in the release of your games, or not?
Absolutely crucial. Absolutely. Like we one of our marketing discussions is if I have somebody who is at work on break and they don't want to sit there and scroll through their Facebook feed on their phone and they want to actually exercise their brain, they have this in their pocket, but they don't have necessarily somebody to play with. So a lot of people will use that. So it is super important, and in our brand for sure.
I think that solo is optional for any title. It all depends upon the experience and whether or not you expect that experience to have a solo mode. New Year's Eve is not soloable. The 2 other games we have coming later this year, one of them is soloable, but just so happens that it'll work well solo. I'd love to do a solo mode for some of our bigger games, but I don't think it's a requirement for a pocket
I'm sorry,
game.
could you repeat the title of the game that's coming out later with the solo mode?
It's called Cultivate.
I think
It just exploded.
solo.
If we have time at the end, I'll show you the logo and promo image.
Ooh.
We'll give you a little preview on the stream.
Solo is interesting to me because it's a different kind of portable. You're not taking it, in the hopes that, you're going to see a bunch of friends and, pull out a game to play. You're taking it because you're going on a trip somewhere or something, and you're going to have some alone time, and you can cram a bunch of little solo games into a small space. So it takes on a little different meaning for portability. And I don't think it's required on every game, but there's definitely people interested in it just to have them small and, you can take them around with you.
Yeah. And we've gone actually the opposite way, which is with our Euro games, we will almost always try and have a solo mode because that's just what the Kickstarter demographic want nowadays, and we want to cater for that. And it's not going to be beat your high score, but our tin games, because they're mass market, they're going to have to be almost like party games, and in a way that's what we're catering for. It's so that you can play with your friends and generally people who just don't play games, and you get the same fun tension that you would with a hobby game, but this time with your non-gamers, and you have that like moment, or you're laughing at each other, or there's back chat or something. So for us, no, we're actively not doing solo modes, mainly because we're spending our time doing solo modes for our Euro games.
So what I'm hearing is everybody, all the attendees, we've got the solo games. Hey, right here, okay?
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. Like, what we really learned through this is that if you don't want a filler pocket game, go to Jason. If you want one that has a solo mode for sure, go to Rachel. If you want a mass market one, go to Caesar. And if you want a silly filler, then come to us.
I mean, we all have our angles. That's how we all can exist in the same place.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of the industry as a whole, but also just the small games market, is that there is something for everyone, right? So maybe that's the take-home message.
It is beauty. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. We are at 1 minute to noon here, but I mean, that's exactly the word that I was going to use. It's beautiful. The fact that there are so many games out there, the fact that all of you have been able to find a spot in this evolving landscape, and the fact that I get to play all these games, I mean, everyone wins, but primarily me.
You win everything.
I do. I represent the player base.
You do. And you do
absolutely.
well.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you everyone so much for coming. I mean, this was awesome for me. I hope everyone else enjoyed it. I hope all of my panelists here were able to feel that they were able to, talk about their design philosophies and what sets them apart. I would love to see that promo image for Cultivate.
Oh yeah, hold on.
Ooh.
Let me share my screen, and I will.
Laszlo, you should probably make sure everybody knows where we can be found too.
Absolutely. Wow.
Beautiful, right?
Nice.
So
It's about succulents.
This is a preview of a new Quarks we have coming called Cultivate. It's a game about planting a garden, a little house garden. And this is the promo image. This is the first time we're showing all this stuff. So, and it's a little bit work in progress because it's still being worked on here. But
I love it.
There'll be different plant cards that will have different well-known plants on them, and your goal is to overlap them correctly so that they are all continuous, and you build points off of having runs of plants that have similar requirements, and there's bugs to hide, and there's little trinkets of gnomes and spiders that you can use to increase your points or do special abilities.
I am looking forward to my many free promo copies.
And then I'll show a little preview. We have another game coming also in the Quarks this fall called Bait and Switch, which is a multiplayer game about a heist and assembling your crew for the heist, and then maybe stabbing each other in the back to steal the points that you got from that heist. And here are a couple sketches of one of the characters, the hacker character, in the game.
I love it.
Very nice.
Yes, I did want to make sure that I pointed out that I'm a member of Jason's Discord server. I'm a member of Rachel's Discord server, and they are truly wonderful communities. I mean, to talk about games, but also just to talk about everything else. The fact that that these games come out maybe more frequently than the most recent iteration of Gloomhaven means that there is always something new to talk about. There is always something happening. Board gamers are very much about the cult of the new, and I feel that small games can really feed that sometimes unhealthy obsession in some really great ways. But they're just absolutely wonderful communities. So absolutely go do look them up. They are also found on Facebook, on Twitter, and I don't know if you guys have a way of just posting your information here in the chat panel. But that would be a great way just to wrap things up, to make sure that if people do want to follow up and want to be members of these communities, it's out there.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate being here. It's been fantastic, and it's been great learning from the rest of you guys. It's first time chatting to a lot of you, so really appreciate it, guys.
We should keep this going. We should keep this going. We should have like a monthly call where the 4 of us or 5 of us, Laszlo, you can come.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And we just talk about what we're doing so we can stay out of each other's area, but still make great stuff.
Good point.
Society of Microgamers right here.
There you go. Yeah. The first association of microgamers.
Well, thank you guys so much. This was wonderful, and absolutely, we should do this again in the future.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for Rachel for setting this all up too. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
On making this happen.
Bye, guys.
Have a great Gen Con, everyone.
See ya.